He was on the ground. Not sitting, not resting. On the ground, knees folded, back against a crumbling wall, head hanging forward like a man who had given up on holding it up. A torn gray blanket covered his shoulders. His shoes were gone. His feet were bare against the cold concrete. Around him, the evening moved. Buses rumbling past, people walking with their eyes ahead, a street dog sniffing at the edge of a gutter. Nobody stopped. Nobody looked. He was just another shadow in a city full of them. Then a woman stepped out of a taxi, and everything changed. She had a carry-on bag, a long coat, still smelling like the airplane. 12 years abroad had straightened her posture, sharpened her eyes, put distance between her and the girl who had once run barefoot through that same street. She wasn't supposed to be emotional. She had come back for paperwork, for signatures, for endings, not for this. She almost walked past him, but something, a sound, a shape, something ancient and unreasonable, made her stop. She turned slowly. She looked at the man on the ground. She looked at the line of his jaw, the angle of his shoulders, the way his hands rested, fingers open, like a man who no longer had anything left to hold. Her bag dropped. "Dad!" The word came out broken, half question, half collapse. It hung in the air between them, fragile and impossible. The old man's head lifted. His eyes opened, slow, cloudy, then suddenly terribly clear. He saw her, and in the silence that followed, 12 years folded in on themselves like paper, like smoke, like everything she had told herself about who he was and what he deserved. She was on her knees beside him before she knew she had moved. "Dad! Dad, look at me! It's Amara! I'm here!" He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Just a breath, just a name, her name, shaped by lips too dry to speak it aloud. And that was all it took. The woman who had not cried at her mother's funeral, who had not called home in 4 years, who had built her whole life on the promise that she did not need any of this. That woman broke open on a street corner in Lagos, holding a man who should have been in a house, in a bed, in a life that still had his name on the door. What happened to him? And what truth had this family been hiding for years? A truth so dangerous that an old man had chosen the street over speaking it out loud. Before we dive deeper into this story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Amara Okiki was 36 years old. She was a data analyst at a consulting firm in Houston, Texas. And if you had asked anyone who knew her professionally, they would have described her using the same 3 words: disciplined, dependable, driven. She had a studio apartment she kept immaculate. She went to the gym at 5:30 every morning. She sent money home twice a year. Not to anyone specifically, just to a bank account she preferred not to think too hard about. She had not spoken to her father in 4 years. Not really spoken. There had been a few texts. "Happy birthday, I'm fine. Things are fine here." But those were not conversations. Those were proof of life. Small signals sent across a distance she had chosen and maintained with the quiet determination of someone who had been very, very hurt. To understand why, you had to go back further. You had to go back 23 years, to a household that ran on discipline and sacrifice in equal measure. Mr. Emmanuel Okeke had been an engineer, a good one. He had worked for a construction company in Abuja for 2 decades, rising slowly, steadily, building a reputation on punctuality and precision. He was the kind of man who fixed things before they broke, who anticipated problems 3 steps ahead, who measured twice and cut once. He brought those same habits home. Dinner at 7, lights out at 9, homework checked before television, church every Sunday, no exceptions. His wife, Grace, had softened his edges. She was warm in the way that houses are warm, not bright, not loud, but steady, present, the kind of warmth you only notice when it's gone. She died of a stroke when Amara was 13, and the house changed overnight. not dramatically. Emmanuel Okiki was not a man who collapsed. He got up. He went to work. He raised his children. He did not cry where any of them could see. But he became harder after that. Quieter, the discipline stayed. The warmth did not. Amara was the eldest. Then there was Chidi, who was 2 years, younger, easygoing, careful, the kind of person who could read a room and adjust himself to it without anyone noticing. And Ngozi, the youngest, who was sharp and social and had her father's precision and her mother's charm, a combination that made her both the most likable and the most dangerous person in any room she entered. For years, the three of them navigated their father's silences like children learning to walk on ice, carefully, always watching, never quite sure when a misstep would crack the surface. Emmanuel loved them. Of that there was never any question. But love, in his house, was expressed through provision, through sacrifice, through making sure there was always food and school fees and a roof that didn't leak. It was not expressed through words, not through warmth, not through the softness Amara had been starving for since she was 13 years old. The fight happened when Amara was 24. She had received a scholarship offer from a university in the United States, a full ride, graduate program, everything covered. She had applied without telling her father because she already knew what he would say. He would say no. He would say the family needed her close. He would say her education was already paid for, here at home, and that there was no reason to chase something foreign when there was something good right in front of her. She told him on a Tuesday evening. She had planned to be calm. She was not calm. "I've already decided," she said. "I'm going." Emmanuel put down his newspaper slowly. He looked at her across the dinner table. "You applied without asking me. I'm 24. I don't need permission." "You need wisdom," he said, "which is different from permission. This family—" "Don't!" Her voice was sharp. "Don't make this about the family. This is about what you want. You want me here so things stay the way they are, so you don't have to adjust, so nothing changes." Something moved across his face, something she couldn't read, something she was too angry to want to read. "Amara, you never believed in me," she said. "Not once. Not when I came first in my class. Not when I won the regional competition. You gave me 10,000 naira and told me not to get proud. Every good thing I did, you found a way to shrink it. And I am done waiting for you to see me." She left for Houston 3 months later. Her father drove her to the airport. They did not speak in the car. At the departure gate, he stopped and looked at her for a long moment, and she thought, she was almost certain, that he was about to say something real, something that would reach across everything between them and land somewhere true. Instead, he said, "Call when you land." She nodded. She walked through the gate. She did not look back. For the first 2 years, she called every Sunday. Then it became every 2 weeks. Then once a month. Then her mother died. A second stroke, the doctors said. Sudden. No. Suffering. And Amara did not come home. She sent money for the funeral. She said she couldn't get away. The truth, which she has never fully admitted to herself, was that she couldn't face coming back to a house that would now contain nothing but her father and her resentment and 12 years of unsaid things. After that, the contact thinned to almost nothing. Chidi would send updates sometimes. "Papa is fine, the house is fine." And Amara would respond with brief, careful messages that asked nothing and revealed nothing. She built her life in Houston, and she told herself it was enough. Then one day, a letter arrived. Legal stationery. A law firm in Lagos. Something about the family property. A dispute, signatures required, a matter that could not be handled remotely. She booked the next available flight. She told herself she would be in and out in 5 days. Sign what needed signing. See what needed seeing. Leave. She had not planned to find her father on the street. She had not planned on any of this. If you're still watching up to now, type "I'm still here" in the comments section. This story is only getting deeper from here. At the emergency desk, Amara's voice was steady. That surprised her. "He's malnourished. Possible dehydration. I don't know how long he's been outside." She answered their questions. She filled in the forms. She gave his date of birth, his blood type, his medication history from memory, information she had stored without meaning to. Information that had survived 12 years of deliberate distance. When they took him through the double doors, she sat down in a plastic chair in the waiting room, and her whole body started to shake. A nurse came to her after 40 minutes. "He's stable, severely malnourished, but no critical organ failure. We'll run tests in the morning. He's asking for you." She went in. He looked smaller in the hospital bed, diminished. The man she remembered from her childhood had been broad-shouldered, upright, the kind of man who filled a doorway. This man was narrow. His skin hung loose from his face. His hands, resting on the blanket, were the hands of someone who had been slowly erased. He was watching her as she came in. His eyes were clear now, fully present. "Sit down," he said. His voice was rough, dry from disuse, from days or weeks of not being spoken to, of speaking to no one. But it was still his voice, still that voice. She sat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The monitor beeped. Somewhere down the corridor, a child was crying. "How long?" she asked finally. He didn't pretend not to understand the question. 3 weeks, maybe 4. 3 weeks. Her father had been living on the street for 3 weeks, while she had been in Houston, finishing a quarterly report, going to the gym at 5:30 in the morning, sending a WhatsApp message at Christmas that he had not replied to. 3 weeks. "Where is Chidi?" she said. Her voice was very quiet. He looked at the ceiling. "Where is Ngozi?" Still, he looked at the ceiling. "Dad." She leaned forward. "Tell me what happened." He closed his eyes. "Not tonight," he said. "I'm tired." She wanted to push. Every part of her wanted to push. But he looked so worn down to something close to nothing, and she had not yet earned the right to demand things from him. Not yet. "Okay," she said. "Not tonight." She stayed until he fell asleep. Then she went back to the plastic chair in the waiting room and sat there alone in the fluorescent light. And for the first time in 12 years, she allowed herself to feel the full weight of what she had walked away from. The next morning, she went to the family house. The gates were locked. The compound was quiet. The guava tree in the front yard, the one she and Chidi used to climb when they were young, had been cut down. In its place, someone had poured a small concrete slab. The curtains in the front window were new. Everything about the place felt occupied and alien at the same time. She knocked. It took 3 minutes before the door opened. Chidi stood in the doorway in a polo shirt and slippers, his face cycling rapidly through several expressions before settling on something carefully neutral. "Amara," he managed to smile. "I didn't know you were coming." "Open the gate," she said. He opened the gate. Inside, the house had been repainted. New furniture in the sitting room, a large sectional sofa, a flat-screen television mounted on the wall, a glass center table with a vase of plastic flowers. It looked expensive. It looked like someone else's house. "Where is Ngozi?" Amara asked. "She went to the market. She'll be back by—" "I was at the hospital last night." Silence. "With Dad," she said. "I found him on Adiola Street, on the ground, in the cold." Chidi sat down. He rubbed the back of his neck. He looked at the floor, then at the new television, then at some middle distance that was easier than looking at her. "It's complicated," he said. Something cold moved through her. "Chidi, tell me what happened to our father." He took a long breath. Then, slowly, piece by piece, the story came out. Not cleanly. Chidi had never been good at clean narratives. It came out in fragments, with qualifications and revisions and little moments where he would stop and say that's not exactly how it was, or you have to understand the situation. But the shape of it, the essential, terrible shape of it, became clear. It had started about 2 years ago. Emmanuel had begun the process of formalizing the family property, updating the documentation, ensuring everything was legally clear. The house they were sitting in now, the land behind it, and 2 small rental properties on the other side of the city had all been in an informal, arrangement for years. Emmanuel had decided it was time to make it proper. In doing so, he had consulted a lawyer. The lawyer had told him that the most straightforward path was to transfer ownership to a formal trust, one that would protect the assets and distribute them to his 3 children equally on his passing. Equally. All 3. That was when things changed. Chidi and Ngozi had been managing the rental properties for several years, collecting rent, handling repairs, making decisions. They had come to think of those properties as theirs. Not legally. They understood the legal reality, but in the practical, daily sense of the word. And when Emmanuel announced the trust arrangement, Ngozi had pushed back. She said the properties should be divided based on contribution, Chidi said. Who had been there? Who had managed things? She said it wasn't fair for someone who left and never came back to get the same share as us. She meant me, Amara said flatly. She meant the situation. She meant me. Chidi didn't answer. The argument between Emmanuel and Ngozi had become a war. Weeks of it, then months. Documents were drawn up. Different documents. Documents that had not been requested by Emmanuel. Documents that Ngozi had arranged through a different lawyer. A lawyer Amara would later discover had been paid from the rental income. A transfer of ownership. Not to a trust. Not equally. To Chidi and Ngozi directly. All Emmanuel had to do was sign. He refused. He kept saying it wasn't right, Chidi said. He was staring at the glass table. That you deserved your share. That it was your mother's house too, that he hadn't built everything just to watch it go sideways at the end. So what did they do? Her voice was very still. Chidi was quiet for a long time. Ngozi got a doctor, he said finally. A doctor who... She said he was getting forgetful, that he was confused, that there were concerns about his capacity. He stopped. The doctor signed a report. Amara stared at him. A mental incapacity report. It was just to... For our father. Her voice cracked just slightly. Our father, who raised us alone for 20 years, who never once, not once, stopped working, stopped paying, stopped being there. You let them say he was mentally unfit. I didn't. Chidi stood up. I didn't know it would go that far. I thought it was just a formality to get the documents, and when he wouldn't leave. When he knew what was happening and he wouldn't go quietly. Silence again. Longer this time. Ngozi told him he had 30 days, and when he didn't go, Chidi sat back down. The locks were changed. The room was very quiet. Outside, a motorbike passed. A woman called someone's name in the distance. The world outside continued at its normal pace, indifferent to the thing that had just been said inside this house. He was locked out of his own house, Amara said. Amara, of the house our mother lived in. The house he paid for. The house you're sitting in right now. She stood up. She picked up her bag. Her hands were not shaking anymore. They had passed through shaking and come out somewhere else, somewhere colder, steadier, and far more dangerous. I'm going back to the hospital, she said. Don't call me. I'll find you when I'm ready. She walked out. She spent 3 days at the hospital, mostly in the chair beside his bed. She brought food from a restaurant down the road. Pepper soup, soft eBay, the things he had always liked. He ate slowly at first, then with more appetite as his body began to remember what it was to be fed. On the second day, he spoke more, slowly, carefully, as if testing each word before he released it. He told her about the fights with Ngozi, about the documents, about the lawyer, about the moment he realized what was happening and understood, with the calm clarity of an engineer reading a faulty blueprint, that the structure was compromised and there was nothing he could do from the inside to fix it. Why didn't you call me? She said. He looked at her. What would you have come back to? War, bitterness, a family tearing itself apart. He paused. You had a life. I didn't want to pull you back into this. That wasn't your decision to make. No, he agreed. It wasn't. I know that. There was something different in him. She had expected defiance, the old Emmanuel, unyielding, certain. Instead, there was a kind of openness she had never seen before, an acceptance, as if the street had stripped away the armor and left something more vulnerable underneath, something more honest. On the third day, the nurse brought his belongings, a small bag that had been found with him, the only things he had taken when he left the house. Inside the bag, a Bible with a broken spine, a wallet with his ID and 800 naira, a photograph of Grace, faded and worn at the corners, and a sealed envelope addressed in his handwriting with Amara's name on it. He watched her pick it up. "I wrote that 2 years ago," he said, "when things started to go bad. I thought, if something happened to me, I wanted you to know." She opened it. Inside was a letter, 4 pages, handwritten in his careful engineer's script. She read it slowly. He wrote about her mother, about the early years of their marriage, the things Grace had dreamed of for her children, the conversations they had had lying awake at night about who each child would become. He wrote about watching Amara grow up, the girl who was always reaching for something just beyond what was in front of her, always straining toward something larger, something he couldn't always name but always recognized. He wrote about the scholarship, about the Tuesday evening dinner, about the things he had not said. "I was afraid," the letter said, "not of losing you to America, of losing you to yourself. You were already so far away, even when you were in the room. I didn't know how to reach you. I never knew how to reach you, and so I said nothing, and you heard my silence as rejection, and you left, and I let you go because I didn't know what else to do." He wrote about the years after she left, about working late, sitting in the chair where Grace used to sit, listening to the house settle around him, about keeping every report card, every certificate, every photograph, including ones taken after she left, printed from the internet, from her LinkedIn profile, from a photo someone had tagged her in at a conference in Chicago. He had been watching, from a distance, in silence, but watching. The last page was about the house, about what he had refused to sign and why. He wrote simply, "I built that house for 3 children. I will not let it be taken from one of them simply because she was brave enough to leave." He had chosen the street over betraying her. Amara put the letter down. She looked at her father. He was watching her with those clear, quiet eyes, waiting. She thought about 12 years. She thought about the things she had believed, that he had never seen her, never believed in her, never thought she was worth choosing. She thought about how completely and totally she had been wrong. "Why didn't you just tell me?" she said. Her voice was very small. "Because you needed to leave," he said. "And I was afraid that if I told you how proud I was, you would find a reason to stay. And I didn't want that for you. I wanted you to go and become whoever you needed to become." He paused. "I just didn't account for what I would become in your absence." She put her head down on the edge of his bed. He put his hand on her hair. And they stayed like that, the two of them. The father who had loved in silence, and the daughter who had run from silence. Finally in the same place at the same time, with nothing left between them but the truth. Ngozi came to the hospital on the 4th day. She came alone, without Chidi, and she came with a particular expression Amara recognized from childhood. Composed, prepared, ready to manage the situation. She was wearing a good dress. She had thought about what she was going to say. She didn't get to say it. Amara met her in the corridor, outside their father's room, and for a moment the two sisters simply looked at each other. Two women shaped by the same house, the same absence, the same father, and yet entirely unrecognizable to each other. "I want to talk," Ngozi said. "So talk." Ngozi took a breath. It wasn't supposed to go this far. The plan was just to secure the properties while we still had time to... "While he was still alive," Amara said. "That's what you were going to say." "It wasn't like that. You had a doctor declare our father mentally incompetent. You changed the locks on his house. You put a man who raised 3 children alone on the street." Amara's voice was completely steady. "Tell me exactly what it was like." Ngozi's composure cracked. "You were gone. You were gone for 12 years. You sent money twice a year and called it being a daughter. While I was here, Amara, every birthday, every hospital visit, every time he got sick, every time the generator broke, every time something needed doing. I was here and you were in America building your life and pretending we didn't exist." "You're right," Amara said. Ngozi stopped. "You're right. I was gone. I was selfish. I chose distance because it was easier than facing what was here, and that was wrong. And I will carry that for the rest of my life." She paused. "And none of that, none of it, gives you the right to do what you did to him." Ngozi looked away. "The documents are being contested," Amara continued. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. The mental incapacity report will be challenged. And when this is done, when every single thing that was taken from him is returned, I will move him somewhere he is safe and cared for, and never has to spend one more night afraid of the people who were supposed to love him." She turned and went back into her father's room. She didn't look back. It took 4 months. 4 months of lawyers and courts and documents and the slow, grinding machinery of a legal system that moves at its own pace, regardless of how urgent the human story inside it is. Amara extended her leave of absence from work. She rented a small flat near the hospital, then near the transitional care facility where her father was moved to recover. She learned things about Nigerian property law she had never expected to know. She had phone calls with her Houston colleagues at midnight, Nigerian time, because the work didn't stop just because her life had. She also spent time with her father, real time, not the dutiful, obligatory contact of the years before, but actual time, sitting with him, eating with him, watching evening television, in the little common room of the care facility with other old men who had survived their own particular versions of being forgotten. He told her stories she had never heard, about his courtship of Grace, about the early years in Abuja, when they had been young and poor and completely certain that things would get better, about the projects he had worked on, the bridges and buildings scattered across the country that bore no trace of his name, but held the precise calculations of his mind. He told her about the night she was born, how he had sat outside the delivery room for 6 hours, and when the nurse finally brought him in, he had stood over the bassinet and made a promise to a person who could not yet hear him that he would spend the rest of his life making sure she had everything she needed to become whoever she was supposed to be. "Even if that meant letting you go," he said simply. "Even then," she agreed. The legal matter was resolved on a Thursday afternoon. The fraudulent transfer documents were declared invalid. The mental incapacity report was dismissed. The family property was returned to Emmanuel Okeke's name, to be administered according to his original intentions, equally, fairly, as his wife would have wanted. Chidi called to apologize. It was a long call, honest in places and evasive in others. The call of a man who knew he had done wrong but was still working out the precise geometry of his own culpability. Amara listened. She said what needed to be said. She did not pretend it was resolved. Some things take longer than a phone call. Ngozi did not call. Emmanuel was discharged from the care facility on a Friday. Amara drove him herself. She had arranged everything: a house, a proper house, clean and warm and close to a good hospital, and a church he had been told was decent. Not in Lagos, where the memories were too thick. Somewhere quieter. Somewhere he could be a person again instead of a symbol of someone else's story. On the drive, he was quiet for a long time. Then he looked out the window at the passing landscape, the roads and the trees and the sky going orange at the edges. And he said, "Your mother would have been angry with me." "For what?" "For not telling you sooner. She always said I kept too much inside." A small smile. She called it my engineering problem. Always calculating, never just saying. Amara was quiet for a moment. I was the same, she said. I spent 12 years not saying the things I needed to say. Yes, he said. You are very much my daughter. She laughed. It surprised her. The realness of it, the way it came out unguarded and genuine. He laughed too. Soft, a little rusty from disuse, but real. They laughed together in the car while the sun went down, and it was not everything. It was not 12 years returned, or a mother brought back, or a family made whole. It was not the erasure of what had been done or the forgetting of what had been lost. It was not a perfect ending. It was a beginning, small and real and hard-won. And for two people who had spent a very long time choosing distance, it was more than enough. There is a particular kind of grief that doesn't have a name. The grief for the relationship you could have had. If only you had stayed a little longer, called a little sooner, looked a little more carefully at the person standing right in front of you. It is not the grief of loss. It is the grief of nearness, of understanding, too late, that the thing you needed was always there, waiting, patient, keeping itself alive on the slim hope that you would eventually turn around. Emmanuel Okeke never blamed his daughter for leaving. He understood, in the deep way that quiet people understand things, that she had needed to go, that the fight at the dinner table was not about a scholarship or a plane ticket. It was about a girl who had been starving for a particular kind of recognition for so long that the only way she knew how to get it was to leave and become undeniable somewhere else. He understood this because he had given her that hunger. His silence had fed it, and he had lived with that knowledge every single day she was gone. What he could not have anticipated was what his silence would cost him in the end. That the children who stayed would mistake proximity for entitlement. That the years of management and presence would curdle, in the absence of honest conversation, into something hard and self-justifying and capable of terrible things. We spend so much time chasing success that we forget the people who sacrificed everything for us to get there. We tell ourselves the distance is temporary, that we will call next week, visit next year, have the hard conversation once things settle down. But things do not settle down, and the people we are not calling are not waiting in place, unchanged, preserved by our absence like figures in a photograph. They are living. They are struggling. They are making decisions without us and carrying weights we cannot see, and sometimes, they end up on the street. By the time we look back, they are not always where we left them. Amara did not fix everything. She did not undo 12 years, or resurrect her mother, or make her siblings into different people than they were. She could not return to her father the years she had spent away, or reclaim the conversations they had never had, or unwrite the letter that had sat in a small bag for 2 years, addressed to her, waiting for her to show up. But she showed up. That has to count for something. In fact, that counts for everything. Not every broken relationship is beyond repair, but every delayed apology comes with a cost. The question is not whether you still have time. The question is whether you are willing to spend it on the people who spent theirs on you. Think about the person in your life whose silence you have mistaken for indifference. Think about the call you have been putting off, the visit you have been postponing, the apology you have been holding on to, waiting for the right moment, not understanding that the right moment was already behind you and the next best moment is now. What would you have done if you had been Amara, stepping off that plane? Would you have walked past the man on the street? Would you have stayed long enough to look? And the harder question, the one that stays with you after this story ends, is this. Is there someone, right now, who is waiting for you to look? If this story moved you, leave a comment below and tell us what moment hit you hardest. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories that stay with you long after they end. And share this video, because somewhere out there is a daughter, a son, a parent, someone who needs to hear exactly this today. We'll see you in the next one.